What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Five Guys podcast. We are here with
Jonathan,
Hav,
Rob.
and we are the Five Guys. We have 3/5 of the members here today. Still on PTO.
Two for PTO.
Yeah. We don't really have an agenda for today, but we did have our person in charge of Instagram ask our audience members a couple questions in regards to topics. So we're going to go over that, but before we jump into that, I have a topic that I would like to discuss with both of you guys. So we'll go ahead and jump right into that. So personally, as you guys know and the audience knows, I have jumped into my journey on coming into my faith. And I feel like when I first started that journey, it was really easy to jump into reading the Bible and really just staying consistent. Now that I feel like everything's falling into place, I feel like I'm kind of falling off that, and I'm trying to bring myself back into, staying consistent, being on my Bible studies. What advice would you have for me to kind of, stay on track?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I will say from my part is I'm kind of in the same boat as you. And I think we kind of lightly talked about that at the gym. It's more of, I don't have advice, not necessarily advice. I'm just really like, how do I say it? I feel alone right now, spiritually. I'm not gonna lie, like that. Like I just feel kind of alone. I think that's kind of normal. I've heard people who like are very like vulnerable online about like their relationship with Christ. Or sometimes when he's quiet, it's a test to see, what you do if you continue to pursue pursue his path of being a follower in Christ, or you kind of wander off in that way just to see like, well, if I gave him everything that he's been asking for, and now like let's see what he does. Now that I gave him everything he asked, like, is he going to continue to come back to me, or is he just going to grab his stuff and leave from there? Like, you got what you wanted, cool, I'm out, or whatever the case is. That's what I've seen people talk about. That's as much as I can say, because I'm kind of not looking for answers, because this isn't the first time I felt it either. I will say that. It's kind of happened to me before when I kind of was getting into my journey, like when I was first new to it, kind of how like you're experiencing.
Right.
It happened to me at that time. And I just kind of came back to it, just like, not like crazy events happened, but I slowly just started coming back to it over time. I'm kind of rambling right now, kind of know that, just because I'm also like figuring all this stuff out for the first time. Because ever since I started to feel it, that's when I talk to you like, hey, how's your Bible studies been? Because I also haven't been reading the Bible as much as I was. I finished the book of Matthew, really great book. Now I started the book of Mark, but I think a little bit as well because the book of Mark is a different perspective of it. And now that I think mentally it's like I'm not as engaged into reading it, because I kind of already know what's going on, but when you give a different perspective from the Bible, you could learn completely different things or understand differently from when you first read it. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do of like, I'm not going to say it like this, but like my retention to it, because I already know what's happening. But then again, it's not even just a physical reading the Bible. It's also about the spiritual essence of it, just feeling kind of alone from that. But that's kind of me rambling a little bit of kind of what I'm experiencing. If anybody in the comments will like be anybody out there, because I'm also going to ask John for advice because you're a little bit more spiritually inclined. But if anybody else in the comments or anything like that has any suggestions or ideas, please let me know. But from John, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a tough question because everyone's journey into spirituality is obviously different because we're all experiencing things at different times. It's not on our time, and what we expect doesn't usually happen until, God obviously grants us those gifts. But I think from my experience and the way that it was told to me was reference to the gym, right? Like we all talk about the 2-week wall, and there's a point where we are like so committed in the beginning and we're like, we have all these ambitions, all these goals, and in 2 weeks you're really not going to see a lot of results. And it's like breaking past that 2-week barrier when you actually like go through being stagnant, because I think that's what I'm hearing from you guys. You're kind of at like a standstill, which it's become stagnant, and like pressing through that discomfort of being stagnant and standing still and seeing like and I would use this, like, in those moments when you do feel that way, there's probably like a redirection or an increase, right? Redirection in the sense, okay, like, up to this point, you've read the Bible, but are you going to church? Like, what else can you add to your spiritual journey that will help break that barrier? And then as far as like the increase goes, I mean, I think sometimes from my own experience, when I was like first becoming a Christian and following God, like, I had to just like sit and reflect. And I think what you're saying, Rob, is very important, because you can read a book, right? And a lot of people read the Bible just like any other book. They're like, I'm just going to get through it from front to back. But if you talk to any pastor and anybody that's read the Bible, from my opinion, sometimes they'll read like one line and just resonate with that for like weeks and days, depending on like how powerful it is. If it is like a Bible verse that you haven't heard, but you're like, for some reason that is just like sticking with me, just dwelling on that for a little bit and letting that like feed into you. Because if something sticks out to you in the Bible and it bothers you that much to where you're like off put, there's a reason behind it, whether it's like self-reflection or God speaking to you. So you have to allow his word to incubate a little bit before you actually see the final product. But from my own experience, when I have felt stagnant, I've had to ask myself a couple things. Cool, like, am I being intentional when I'm reading the word? Am I just doing it out of practice or routine? And then what else can I be doing? And feeling alone happens, right? Because, you know, in fellowship, it's called fellowship for a reason, because we need to establish a community of like-minded individuals or spiritual brothers, sisters, etc., that help push us. And sometimes we can only interpret as far as our minds and our hearts will allow us to, or what we hear from God. But other perspectives are really important to developments, because you have to keep an open mind, open heart, strong spirit. And not always when we're walking down the path do we have all the tools or insights that we need to continue down the path. Because, and I'll use this one analogy. I talk a lot, and I always do, and I always will.
We love it, bro.
Yeah,
we all love it.
For sure.
But you know, my thing is like terrain. I guess I would use terrain, right? Like, for right now, getting into your biblical journey, reading the Bible, you know, asking the questions that you need to, speaking to God, going to church if you do go to church, like, that is one terrain that you are comfortable with, right? But then there's a point in the road where maybe you reach a mountain or you reach a lake and need different training that you haven't done before, or you need help from someone who's done the training who can guide you across the lake. And so it's important that when you do reach that point of being stagnant, or like, okay, I've reached like a dead end in my journey, it's not necessarily a dead end. It's just like, cool, I'm at a moment where I either need to advance through the word and continue reading the Bible, I need to sit still and reflect on what I've read, or I need to connect with people who can get me to the next chapter or to the next step in my spiritual journey. And so from my experience, that's everything that I've had to ask myself, and it does feel really like isolated. I do feel like, okay, what's the point? You know, especially if you are skeptical in the beginning of your journey, because that causes a lot of questions, because then our humanity takes over and it's like, cool, what now? And that's the big question. What now? I've done all this. I haven't really seen the results that I needed, which my gym reference, right? First 2 weeks, you're not going to have a six-pack. You're not going to hit 315 on bench. You're not going to do all these things. But it's like, okay, cool. Like, up to this point, you've earned your routine, right? And now that you have a consistent routine, now it's time to prove why you deserve it. And that's just how I explain it to people who like develop in leadership. Cool, you got the manager position, but that's not the end of the road. What are you going to do to continue to either, one, prove that you deserve your manager role, right? Or get promoted to the next position. And I look at religion kind of similar in that sense. Like, cool, we've proven to a point that we're asking the right questions to get our foot in the door. Now that our foot is in the door, do we come in or do we step back out? And then if we do come in, cool. What if it's a house you've never been to and you need to use the restroom? Are you going to ask another question? Are you going to hold it in? Are you going to leave? You know, so there's a lot of directions you can take. But my suggestion is just don't let that be the roadblock that stops you or pushes you backwards. You know what I mean? And so I would just continue to ask yourself some questions of like, cool, like, has this just become a routine of obligation, or is there further steps that I can do, right? Or if you've read things and you're like, I'm talking about it right now, like if I'm saying like, you read Matthew, and now there's a Bible verse in Matthew that pops in your head. That is probably something you should look at. Yep.
Matthew chapter 5,
and
verse 22. Don't call anybody an idiot.
Yeah.
It's something that we all kind of maybe do, like if it's road rage or anything like that. We say something in our head, like very like minuscule, like or deceiving or whatever. It's like not something you should be doing. But that's why, and also my dad does it too. Not to call him out or anything like that. We're all human. We've all had some sort of negative thought towards somebody. But Matthew chapter 5 verse 22, I think, and I could be wrong. It'd be 23, but I think it's 5:22. It does talk about like don't call anybody an idiot, don't talk bad about anybody or anything like that, because it's basically you're killing the character of a person in that way.
Yeah.
But that just resonated like real quick on that.
Yeah, and usually like we just. I would say bypass those thoughts, not bypass, but we overlook them in a way because we're like, okay, cool. Something popped up in my head, but maybe that's just me. You know what I mean? And I think that's a saying I hear a lot when it comes to Christianity or ideas or anything that happens in your mind. It will like pop up because it's supposed to, or it's something that means something to you, but you've overlooked it and now it means nothing because you're going to sweep it under the rug and not look twice, you know what I mean? But I think it's important when things like that do pop up, that you just like either one, ask yourself some more questions around it, like why is that verse sticking out to me? Is it for me or is it for someone close to me? Because that's another thing that as new Christians, or again people who are beginning their spiritual journey, don't really understand yet, is sometimes when we receive words from God or Jesus, Holy Spirit's talking to us, we think it's specifically for us, but sometimes the word is actually for someone who's either close to you or someone that you're going to acknowledge. And that's the hard part to really comprehend about the word. And when we would do outreach, you know, we would pray and like receive words, and it would be like drunk in the spirit is what we used to call it. But sometimes people would take it personal and just be like, oh, this is just for me, but that doesn't make sense because I'm not in this turmoil. But it's like, yeah, but Jesus works in so many different times and directions and more lives than just yours. And so if something does resonate with you, but it doesn't mean anything to you, or it's not about you, then it's maybe about someone that is close to you or someone that you're going to encounter. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, so that, I mean, my advice, keep it short and sweet, just to track before I continue on my sermon, is, yeah, if you reach a point where you do feel stagnant, it's like, okay, here's the questions you should ask. Cool. One, why do I feel stagnant is the first thing. Secondly, what can I do more to kind of get me out of this rut? And then I think the third thing would be like, cool, who can I connect with about this and speak to people? And I always suggest, and this is something that a close friend told me, is like, if you're going to talk to somebody about your religion, like it's not always that good to talk to your friends about it. Talk to somebody who has experience first, whether it's a pastor, whether it's just a person who's older, or no age discrimination, but someone who's been in the spiritual walk for a long time or longer than you, that can provide you credible advice. Right. You know what I mean? But it is common, and just like I said, the journey.
Yeah, really quick, sorry to interrupt you, but I like what you said there, because my grandma is, you know, she's a lot older than I am, and she's been, you know, studying religion for a while now. So every time I go to her, I'm like, Grandma, you know, why does it say this in the Bible, or what? And she's like, oh, you know what? You know, sometimes she'll have the answer and sometimes she doesn't. So it's like, but you're always going to be learning. No matter how old you are, no matter how long you've been studying the Bible, you're going to always be finding something new. Like she's always saying, oh, well, you know, I've been doing this for so long, and every time I open up the Bible, I'm learning something new. So I'm like, wow, there's always going to be, you're always learning. And that really goes for anything that you do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. A lot of Christians who read the Bible, or yeah, I mean, it's specifically, I use my pastor as an example. He's probably read the Bible more than like 100 times, right? But he always mentions that, like, you know, sometimes when he goes through sections of the Bible, it speaks differently to him at the time that he needs it. Whether it's, you know, he's going through turmoil, or he's just in a different stage in life than he was when he read it the first few times. It always hits different. And that's what I think people mean by like, oh, I'm learning something new. It's not necessarily that you're learning new information because it's the same Bible for the most part. But it's just hitting you different in a way that you're understanding it.
Really quick, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I just wanted to say this really quick. Do you feel like everybody interprets the Bible differently?
Yeah, I mean,
Because you like you said, you could read. Is it a verse? You could read a verse.
Yeah, verse to verse.
You know, like a year from now, you can come back to it and see it differently. Does that? I guess my question is like, because we have all these priests and preachers and all that. I don't know where I was going with this, but everybody. I guess what I'm trying to say is everybody has like a different interpretation. So it's like
Where they read a verse, they could understand it differently.
Right,
in that sense.
right.
yeah.
Like, for example, I guess the Matthew chapter 5 verse 22, as in don't call anybody an idiot, as in somebody would, and it's killing of the character. It's like somebody might interpret it as like, are we talking physically killing? Are we talking about emotionally killing, spiritually killing? Like interpretations in that way, misunderstanding certain words.
Definitely.
That way. Gotcha. I zoned out on something right now. I was gonna say.
It's okay. I'm gonna use Rob as an example because you're in media, right? And you take photos and you record videos, and that is categorized as like art. And I think in history, even today, like some art pieces in the world are interpreted so many different ways, but it's still art. It's still the same piece. It's just interpreted by different people. So how that relates to the Bible, yes. Everybody's going to interpret it differently because God's speaking to everyone differently. We're all on different journeys in our life, right? We're all different people. And not always is God going to say the same thing. But one thing also, Jesus doesn't speak to you in the same way every single time. Right. Sometimes from my experience, again, this is all what I've learned. And what was told to me is like in one season of your life, Jesus will speak to you. And sometimes he might not say anything, but bring that up so you can interpret it or figure it out yourself. Because he wants you to learn. He doesn't want to provide all the answers for you because how easy would that be? You know what I mean? Even though he could. But there's been many times too where I've gone through the same experience or I've heard the same verse or I've had like deja vu for a reason. And it's because in that time that I am in my own life, he's just speaking to me in different ways. And that's the crafty part about him, which I respect a lot. And it would be like your parents telling you the same advice throughout your life, but it's not until you're adult that you actually resonate and understand what they were trying to say. And I use my dad as an example because he would always tell me like little riddles or like drop some heavy quotes. And at the time I was like, whatever. And then a couple years later, I would do something and he'd feel the need to say it again. But it would be interpreted a little different because not always do we share things verbatim, repetitively. And I was like, cool, that kind of makes sense, whatever. And then it wasn't until I was an adult and he probably dropped it again where I was like, okay, that totally makes sense. And now that I am an older adult, I go back to my dad and like, dude, thank you, because that fully hit me.
And it hits different.
Yeah,
it hits different when you physically, compared when you're 15 years old and you're young, ignorant, and reckless, whatever the case is, to where you're 25 years old and you hear that same thing because you've gone through heartbreak, because you've gone through being fired or quitting a job or horrible relationships or whatever the case is. You've gone through so much now, and when people give you that advice at 25 versus at 15, it completely hits different, more in the heart, where like it could almost feel like emotional because like, damn, like I had these answers right here. Like somebody gave me like, how do I even say this? Like somebody gave me an arrow, but I never had the bow to actually use it because that bow was given to you throughout life. And once that arrow is given to you, it's like bow and arrow, now it's usable because everything you've experienced throughout life. So like, I know exactly what you're like talking about, like on the nail right now.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect because like that's a good example too. Like if someone gives you an arrow and you don't have a bow, either you're gonna wait until someone gives you a bow, or you're gonna learn how to make an arrow. Or sorry, vice versa. Yeah, you're gonna have the arrow and need to learn how to make a bow, or whatever journey you're on, you might be able to trade it, come across one, whatever. And the same thing with the word is like, yeah, the Bible's there, but I think like we look at it as an instructional book that needs to happen now, which we've spoken on. Like God's time is different from our time. His word is different from our word. And the way his plan is always going to be different from ours because we expect what we want, but he's working in the ways that we need. And that's like something that I had to come to the conclusion with because I've always tried to force it sometimes where I'm like, why isn't this happening? Or why did you do this? And it's like, it wasn't until years later where I was like, oh my God, thank you. I needed to experience that because he doesn't only speak to us through his word, reading the word, you know, in our dreams or, you know, in our thoughts, but in other ways too, like our experiences in life, like his dialogue is so diverse, but we communicate in, you know,
physical tongues,
physical body language, etc. But like as humans too, like English, different languages, etc. But he speaks to us in many different ways, and it's not until you really get to know him and practice, you know, implementing his word in your life and developing that relationship when you begin to open up your dialogue a little bit. And when you open up, when you learn more, right, keep a broad spectrum, open mind, you start to see things that you probably never would have seen before, or you know things or know what to look for and can check yourself. Am I having tunnel vision for what I want and what I need because I'm being selfish, or am I keeping an open mind waiting for what he wants to give me? And that's a difficult challenge to get through.
Gotcha. So
that was beautiful, by the way.
With I guess where I'm trying to go with this is everybody interprets the Bible differently. You know, from a preacher to me to you, we're all gonna probably interpret the Bible differently. So with that being said, there's different branches within Christianity, and God speaks to us in different ways. So, you know, what happens, or not what happens, but like, say you're Catholic. I know you're not Catholic, but you're Catholic. You're Orthodox Christian. I don't know, some type of
something.
So there's an end goal, right? Which is heaven, correct? Are we gonna all end up in the same spot because you think God is speaking to you from your interpretation? You think it's correct. I think mine is correct. But we're all under the same branch. So do you think that, like, where do you think that we're gonna end up if we're all, you know, everybody's interpreting it different? So do you believe like everybody that believes in Jesus is gonna end up in the same place, or is it like
in heaven or hell?
As in still being a follower of Christ, but just different
religions
and stuff like that.
Exactly, but it's under the same branch.
No, I think what you're asking is like these different denominations who practice like specific religion of Christianity, right? Because there's like apostolic.
I know what you're.
I know what you're talking about too.
See, because there's so many branches, I don't even know. Like personally, I don't even know anymore.
There's so many different denominations, and I'm not saying my denomination is right because my denomination, the church that I went to ministry school for, and the gifts that we practice was non-denominational because all the spiritual gifts that we have come from the Bible, you know. And if you read the Word, like it doesn't really specify like which denomination is the ultimate key to heaven,
right?
You know what I mean? And I hear what you're saying. It's like, cool, if I practice this denomination, does it hinder me from getting into heaven? And to be honest, I don't really have an answer to that. But I think for anyone who's a singular denomination, like opening your mind to the other gifts, because some people believe in speaking in tongues, some people believe in Holy Spirit. But also like in the Bible talks about all these things, you know, but and this is like me kind of being, I want to say discriminatory, but this is me calling out people who just believe a certain denomination. Is like, the Word is the Word, and if you don't believe in God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, like, don't show up on Easter then. You know what I mean? And for Christmas, don't celebrate Christmas. And
don't play the part if you're not going to worship the part.
Yeah, don't play the part, and don't twist or morph God's stories or His Word to fit your lifestyle and your denomination. You know what I mean? Because I think the one thing that I love the most about being in a non-denominational, and again, this is all my personal experience and what I enjoyed, but I learned every single spiritual gift, like healing, right? Speaking in tongues, and just soaking in His Word, and Yeah, I mean, not exorcism, but saving people, you know what I mean? And so there were so many different gifts that I learned, and I have books on them too, which I'll bring a book and give it to you. I have so many books, actually, that I can give you. Oh my gosh.
And that's your answer, bro.
And
like,
there's
everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, and they're actually really good books that just teach you, about changing your lenses a little bit. And so, yeah, I think when people commit to a denomination, they're cutting themselves off or selling themselves short from learning these other gifts that were meant to be given to us, right? Because if God lives within inside us, right? The dove and everything, like, we're supposed to play his part on earth, right? Like, he lives within us. We're spitting images of him, but then we only believe in one side of him and one side of his gifts, or like, whatever suits us best. Like, your level of reach again isn't going to be able to be that in a big enough radius, right? Like, you will only be able to connect with people within your denomination. But it's like, no, dude, like, not everyone is going to think the same way, which is the unfortunate part of the world. If everyone just believed in all the gifts, was non-denominational, or like at least open their minds a little bit and open their hearts, then I think we'd see a little bit more success. Because I've gone to different churches, some pretty intense denominations where I'm like, oh my gosh, and I was a youth pastor at the time, going to these churches to like learn and experience these pastors, and I was like, I feel kind of uncomfortable.
Have you seen the ones where they like strung up in the air, like flying and stuff like that? Like a bunch of like crazy things that get kind of a little too dramatic almost in a way.
Yeah, it's just interesting, I guess you can say. And I don't mean uncomfortable like I'm dissing on the way that they practice, but
but the norm.
More in the sense that it's like, cool, like I feel like there should be more to this, because if you were coming into a church where they're all speaking tongues and you haven't developed that,
you're gonna be like, wait, what's going on?
You might be a little scared. It might never go back. You know what I mean? And so, again, before I continue on my tangent, I think the question of, if you believe in a certain non-denomination, are you still going to get to heaven? I think yes, depending. But then again, like, I'm not the one to judge. God will judge. But I do think, like, in this world and what we're set out to do and why we're put here, you're going to sell yourself short. I do. And
I like that, because it's honest, and a lot of people don't like honesty. Like, not honesty, but a lot of people don't like the truth. And I guess to touch on something that you kind of mentioned, as in, don't show up to Easter, don't show up to Christmas. If you're not gonna play that part, like, don't just play the part, worship the part too. I'm gonna ask a question that might be triggering to the audience or to anybody who sees this clip. But this is also maybe a question for you, since you're a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah.
And this question stems because Hav and I, we always talk a lot about Christians and Catholics and stuff like that, because it is still under Jesus Christ. It's a branch. You have your Catholics, you have your Christians, you have your everything else. And I say that with like no disrespect. It's just I'm not knowledged in the other ones. I just know Catholic, I know Christian, but there's like all these other ones that are really like, like they're hard for me to pronounce. I'm not the brightest, but they're hard for me to pronounce at times. But and the forest fire that I'm talking about is like when you stated, as in, don't grab like the word or twist it into your own needs. And this might be a question that we've already answered before, but it just resonates so much because I've always had this question, and it's not nobody's fault if you're raised to be a Catholic. There's nothing wrong with being a Catholic. I'm not saying anything about that. But when the churches grab certain parts of the Bible and they twist it around, I'm not going to be able to know all the Bible verses off the top of my head.
But is it twisting it around, or is it a different interpretation?
And that's kind of the part that I didn't want to, like, is it twisting it, or is it like interpreting it differently? Because when it says, don't call anybody on earth your father, for there is only one Father, as in meaning Jesus Christ. Yep. But in that interpretation, as in, are you physically talking about, don't call the priest who teaches the word or teaches about Jesus, just because there's so many different ways that could go. When are we not supposed to call him a father in that way, as in worship him, or are they allowed to call him Father? Because it's like, oh, Father, we're learning from him as people learn from Jesus as a father. And that way, then there's, your physical, biological father, and there's like that. So I think this is like a bounce back from from your question, from that, and I don't know, I'm kind of rambling right now. It's kind of a question, it's kind of a rant, it's kind of just throwing it out there and see where the wind takes it again.
I know exactly where you're going with it too, though, because I have the same exact question, and I'm like, because I grew up Catholic, so, going to church, there's the Father, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I always thought,
Sorry. Oh, okay.
And not that it's not. I'm just, I guess, trying to find my
your way around it,
to
do it properly.
Because, like you said, because I remember you sent me this whole,
Yeah, there's a whole chart out there about. There's a whole chart, and again, my mind is very curious. I'm not attacking Catholics. I'm not going after Catholics. It's just I sent Hub this whole chart that talks about everything that the religion of Catholicism. Thank you. Yeah. Everything that can contradict the Bible in that way, and we had a lot of like balance and forwards. Just again, not hating, but just conversating and talking about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to throw that out there, just see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my interpretation, and again, this is just me. It's just like, I mean, when it asks for like the Father, right, or when it states the Father, I always just think of God, right? I look at the trilogy, right? God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, because they're all the same.
One.
Yeah, all one. And so that's how I acknowledge it. As far as like how preachers preach, we all have. I mean, when I was a preacher too, like, I think the tough part is I would just pray so much before I delivered my sermon. I spoke to youth too, so I have to not only like interpret what God is saying, but I have to articulate it in a way that makes sense. But no way, shape, or form that was I ever like, I'm going to use this to my advantage to convince people to be Christians or to follow God, because that's not my job. My job is just to like be the example or share the word. But a lot of the time, to be honest, when I was preaching, dude, it would felt like raining fire in there. Like, I feel like I would black out and not even know what I was saying. And at the end, my partner at the time, she was way more experienced than me. And I thank her a lot for her perspective and her guiding me. But she would just be like, wow, that was amazing. You said this. I was like, did I? Like, and that's where like getting drunk off the Holy Spirit comes from. I mean, you read Bible verses where like the people in church were like acting like they were drunk because the Holy Spirit just rained upon everybody or, entered everybody.
It's like a blissful moment, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's also like the blackout moment comes through and you just kind of like spit fire and like people get saved, and it's miraculous. You know what I mean? And so I guess the question, I can't change how pastors, give their sermons and how they strategize it, because they all, to each their own, and they all interpret the word differently and read the word differently, but the word's the word. And I would use like propaganda as the example, right? There's the entire story, and there's what they give you to convince you or to make you watch or to draw your attention. And I'm not saying that's the intentions behind every single pastor. I just think that, sometimes I've experienced churches where I'm like, whoa, you really took that a different route than I've ever heard. But I'm going to listen because maybe there's some value still in that, whether I agree or disagree. But I've always been taught, like even through ministry school, like the word is the word. Like if it's in the Bible, it's facts. And there's so much controversy that goes around where Christians, and this is what makes it confusing and hard to join a fellowship or choose a denomination or follow God in general, is that the way that people are delivering or articulating the Bible is, again, to meet the satisfaction of their audience, because people only want to hear what they want to hear half the time, and when they don't want to hear what they want to hear, they ridicule you or you receive backlash. And so it's very like, it is also just, it's a confusing moment, you know what I mean? And I've gone to so many conferences, and my favorite one was when I went to Florida. I went to this conference, and they just literally, like these world-renowned preachers just called out Christians. And that's something that I was like, wow, I am new to this. I am like barely taking my baby steps in my, youth pastorism, I guess you can say. And I'm learning and also like growing with God myself, and just to hear this was kind of like baffling, but their testimonies and the facts in the world kind of point towards it being not the way it's supposed to be. It's definitely changed, and I know it's fighting the good fight. And the hard part about it is like God's not here himself, like as a human,
Physically, physically, but spiritually,
to convince you that his stories are real. You know, we really have to use preachers and like testimonies to convince individuals that like, hey, like this is evidence of everything. And then obviously like your own relationship too, like you're going to encounter Jesus and Holy Spirit on your own terms. But I just hope that it happens so that people understand like, okay, cool, like we're not perfect as humans, and there are things that are said and done that don't really prove the facts. They're not very credible, but hoping that you develop your relationship in the right way so that you can encounter those moments and hear those things and see those things for yourself.
So, I guess, for example, the Catholic faith has the Pope, and right now the Pope is kind of under fire.
Yeah, he is.
He's doing a lot. I guess my question is, do you think politics play a big part into, what the preachers and the Pope, or do you think that's kind of, or the people that are higher in politics are telling them, you need to say this, you need to do this? And I know, like the Pope, he hosted, nothing against the LGBTQ community, but he hosted a dinner for them, and that, to my knowledge, it's
questionable. Yeah, like it's against. Yeah, it's questionable in the eyes, but like I know where you're going with that. Like, is it?
Is it breaking the transcripts? Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna state this first and foremost. We've talked about this before. We got a backlash about it, but we are like LGBTQ friendly, and a lot of our friends are actually involved and identify and have sexual preferences.
I will state one thing. We LGBTQ friendly, but I'm just saying this for me, but I may not support it. I support the person because I love the person. I just do not love their sin. I will treat everybody with respect the best that I can, but I will not support the sin. I just had to say that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And no offense. And I guess like to go to your question, because that's a little bit more specific of an event. But as far as like, and I've talked about this before too, is I think, politics do play a lot in Christianity. And I think that's the point of when I went to this conference, we had some of the preachers calling people out because Christianity is now this image where pastors drive the nicest car.
They're making like crazy amount of money too. And
they want the biggest churches, and I think it's like not only political, but it's a status quo. You know what I mean? Like you have to have the biggest church, you have to drive the nicest car, you have to donate the most money, you have to have the best suits, and I do think that does change. It's part of the image nowadays, and hence social media and the way that we're marketing ourselves. And do I believe it's right? No. Do I believe it's wrong? No, because not every pastor who makes the most money or drives the nicest car aims for that as their main intent. It might change, but I do think like to some point there's a line crossed. And I think I wouldn't really know unless I was in their shoes. But as far as the Pope goes, I already understand that there's a lot of like not allegations, but there's a lot of controversy like with him and his faith and his beliefs, etc. And yeah, I mean, Rob mentioned this earlier, and I think it was kind of overlooked. Like, as humans, we're going to be so quick to judge because the first thing we want to know is like, is it right or wrong? But it's like, cool, like, what is right and wrong? Because it's all very controversy. What we think is right is opinionated. What we think is wrong is opinionated, depending on how we're brought up, what our beliefs are, etc. So God's judgment, like we can all judge. And I told someone this before when I was a youth pastor, like humans can judge, like, right? Because there's this saying that only God's judgment matters. Yes, it's true. Humans can judge too. Everyone can judge, but the fact is that yes, only God's judgment matters, or only God can judge me. It's like no, not only God can judge you. Humans judge you, because that's somewhat part of our nature. But only God's judgment matters. Is how I was meaning to say that. You know what I mean? So I think people get that twisted because they're like, oh, well, only God can judge me. It's like, no, everyone judges you, whether it's very small or it's huge, but only God's judgment matters. So at the end of the day, like, we can all have our perspectives, criticism, opinions, but like, when you die, it's not really up to the people that were standing on this planet to determine where you go.
Talking about dying, this is a little off track, not too much, but I just heard it, and I'm not sure if I heard it from Django's podcast or anywhere else, but basic instructions before leaving Earth. Is that is that?
I love that. Yes.
For anybody who didn't get it, basic instructions before leaving Earth stands for Bible. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it officially stands for Bible. I'm just throwing it out there. Have you heard of that?
It's an acronym. Yes. And that's kind of like...
Is that your first time hearing it?
Yeah, I was like processing.
Yeah, basic instructions before leaving Earth.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've heard that before too. And
it was the first time I heard it, which was, I think, today when I was at the gym, and I had a podcast going on, but yeah. I think I've heard a lot of like, I guess I would say like opinions or like, we'll stick with opinions. But yeah, that the statements that I have heard as well is like the Bible is only an instruction book on telling people how to be good people. Mm-hmm. Like how to live the good life.
And I feel like that goes for, any other, I haven't read any other Bible myself, but I feel like a lot from what I hear is the same thing. Like most Bibles are it just tells you
on how to be a good person.
Exactly.
A good man, a good woman. The book of
it does.
I think Proverbs 31 somewhere along that chapter describes like a woman, a noble woman. I believe you're 100% correct. And then I can't find all the other ones about men, but it goes everything of what men want to go for. About, treat women with respect, treating everything like that, but also tells men like, hey, don't do these sins, don't, sleep around, don't cheat. And sometimes nowadays that's what people or men want to. I say people and men, just it's directed towards men, but people want to do, and it's telling you not to do it. So exactly.
Yeah, and I think this is what I struggle with too, because, say you're, I don't know, some other religion. Say you're Buddhist.
Atheist. How about that?
Atheist?
Or is that...
No,
it has to be somebody you worship.
Like a Buddhist.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
And
I don't know what that is.
Well...
Yeah, but I got you.
Say they're a really good person, and they go through their life living through how their Bible or whatever... Mm-hmm. Not whatever, but what...
Their instruction manual, such as, let's say, the
Bible. They
Bible.
follow it really good.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where I struggle, and I'm like, well... they're going to go to hell if they don't believe in Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where I struggle, because I feel like if you're a good person, I guess it's not for me to judge, because it's like how you said, it's at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that's where I struggle, because I'm like, well, there's a lot of people out here that don't believe in Jesus, and they're good people. But at the end of the day, I guess it's just not for us to judge. It's just something that I struggle with, because I'm like, wow, you're a really good person, but you have a different faith. Yeah. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I come up with that question in my head, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm the most appropriate to talk on this either, because like I have experience, just with my background, but I would say, like, again, Rob mentioned this, and it was overseen in the last podcast. Like, I do think that, when it comes to someone's life on earth physically ending, like, they're going to meet their maker, right? And that will be determined. But as humans, we are always the first to point out or question what's right and wrong. Mm-hmm. Always. And that's our flesh. Like, if we see someone doing something that we think is wrong, we're always going to be like skeptical. Like, is that right or wrong? Is that going to get you where you need to be?
Even our tattoos.
Yeah.
At times could be looked at as like, you're a Christian, you're this. Like, that's
Jesus had a tattoo. Bro. It's in the Bible. It's in there.
Wait, what?
It is on his thigh. Yeah. I can't remember what verse, but it's in there. You can look it up. You can look up the verse. Yeah.
Jesus had a tattoo?
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm assuming the term tattoo could be...
It wasn't tattoo.
It was a marking that wasn't...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can look it up. I'll even look up the verse. Yeah, but that was something that was astonishing to me too, because I always question tattoos. But then there's another gift, is tattoo interpretation. What do your tattoos mean? Why would they teach that in ministry school if it wasn't a part of the Bible some way, somehow? Or why are we so in love with art if you know it's not something that we were supposed to be, given? Yeah. And again, this is what I've learned. I've read it. I don't know the Bible verse on top of my head or the story, but I will look it up and share it. But
once I clip this, I'll add the Bible verse at the bottom. All that great stuff.
Super sick. But anyways, yeah.
If I could mention another thing before we, because I'm like, now that we're on this page, I just want to ask more questions. And again, this is an open question to you guys, if you guys know the answers, or to anybody else that's out on the internet. And this is a little off topic. I'm so sorry. It's my brain's going a million miles an hour right now. And this is again with the to anybody who is Catholic. In the Bible, it says, do not say the same prayer over and over and over, but to say this prayer. Then it gives you a prayer to say in the Bible. Why is in the Catholic churches that when you confess your sins to the, the Pope, to the pastor, that pastor then gives you a list of
50 Hail Marys and 30 Our Fathers.
Yeah. Why is that? And again, if you guys know the answer, please go ahead. But if not, we could jump from there and jump around. But I just wanted to clip this, so if there's any traction out there, we could definitely talk about it in the comments because I'm genuinely curious. Are you searching it up or?
No, I'm just looking up something else.
I actually, I think you're the one that brought it up to me, and I never knew that it said to not repeat.
I think it's the
prayer.
Book of Matthew. I could be wrong, but that's just because the Book of Matthew. I really enjoy the Book of Matthew. Even it just being like the one book that I actually could look into and understand it, just because it's descriptive of how Jesus came to physical form and did his teachings.
Sorry, I found it. Revelations 19:16. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Book of Revelations talks about the future. So is that talking about the future, or is that verse from the past? And that's just my lack of knowledge from the Bible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wouldn't be the one to have the answer. But it's written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's where that comes from. Because I know it's kind of like a tag too, like King of Kings.
I didn't know.
Lord of Lords. But it says it, Revelation 19:16. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Interesting.
I'm lost for words on that. That's brand new information. I thought, somebody who has tattoos and enjoys getting tattoos for the art and meaning, that I would know something like that. But
yeah, no, and we went through like dream interpretation and like tattoo interpretation in ministry school. Hence why I think non-denomination was pretty cool, because I learned a lot of spiritual gifts. But I also have a lot of, I forget because you have all these questions, but I actually have a lot of my school stuff still.
We get excited because you have this knowledge. We're all the same age. We get along. We see each other every day. And now that we're on the pod, it's something that I get excited about because somebody my age can understand how I think because of modernism and stuff like that. So it's exciting. That's why I have so many questions too.
That's so funny. Yeah, but anyways, next time I'm at the gym, I'll just bring some stuff. But I have some pretty cool books that just really dive deep into like the spiritual gifts, but also, some other resources as far as like the tattoo interpretation goes, dream interpretation, talking in tongues, etc. But I do think that they're all like very beneficial. And for anyone, again, who doesn't believe in multiple denominations, like I would suggest that you start practicing some of these gifts, because again, you're holding yourself back from information that might be super cool. Because useful, because again, if you're only reaching out to people who are a specific denomination, or pulling them into your denomination, like what about people with tattoos? Are you just gonna peace or what? And I know that I guess like Christianity is becoming more modernized. The Bible is becoming more modernized and accepting because of what the world says, but the Bible is still the Bible.
I have something to share, actually. Yes. I'm gonna need my phone because this is very beautiful and I love it because exactly what you're saying. It's becoming very modernized. It's a little bit long of a video. But it says Satan will change the name of sin. I'm not going to play it out loud just in case for any sort of copyright. So instead of changing our ways... Okay, let me see here. It's just a lot of information. I could play it out loud, but I mean, it's just... We should be fine. Hold on.
Satan will change the name of sin to make sin adaptable to accept. So instead of changing our ways, we will change the wording. Instead of pedophilia, we'll call it minor attracted people. Instead of sexual exploitation, let's call it adult entertainment. Instead of sex cults where we bump and grind, we'll just call them music clubs. Instead of cults, we'll call them clubs. Instead of adultery, we'll call it swinging and open marriages. Instead of mental illness, let's call it gender dysphoria. Instead of gender mutilation, let's call it gender transitioning. Instead of fornication, let's call it intimacy. Instead of lust, let's call it love. Instead of calling it a spiritual battle of good and evil, let's call it political. Let's call it a phobia. Let's call it hate speech. Call it something else. We are not called baby killers. We're called abortionists. It's no longer sin. It's a complex. It's an addiction. It's a disorder. It's an obsession. So we don't feel bad about our sins. We change the name of them. And when we hear the truth preached, we feel conviction, but we condemn the preacher as hate speech. Satan will change the name.
Something intense.
Yeah.
But I 100% understand kind of what you're saying, especially through this, because I heard this, and it's just funny that, what a coincidence that I have that video on hand right at my photo gallery, because I just saved it yesterday because I thought about it, and I was going to share it with you, actually, just as more knowledge for you. You know, why not? Because we're always talking about
like that
Christ.
was a video that was supposed to be sent to me, too.
Yeah, and I never got to it.
I was
Because
like, I feel like he was going to send that to me.
I never got to it because I got busy with editing and work and all that great stuff. But yeah, that's just kind of to establish and fortify what you're saying, that the Bible is becoming more modern, but it might not be for the best intentions either.
Yeah, and I mean, and might come across as condescending or start some more controversy or portray the best image, but
because it's
yeah, I think we have an excuse for everything nowadays, and we have a name for every excuse nowadays. You know, for the reason why people don't work hard, or this generation's in the generation of broken hearts, or why, like, you know, things are more accepted versus why they're not, or like when people kill people, like there's this like court case of, okay, are they mentally insane or are they not? You know what I mean? Like, I do relate to that video, you know, at some capacity, because I just think like we're just creating more excuses for our weaknesses than we've ever had before.
Rather than staying disciplined and a strong person, we become more weaker and diluted in what the actual word is, such as, let's touch on the one to target myself. I'm not talking about me currently, just to remain private. Premarital sex. Mm-hmm. That's lust. That's a sin. But I always try to back it up. I'm like, oh no, this and that, and no, it's okay. But deep down, it's a sin. A sin is a sin. Mm-hmm. And I could try to paint that picture beautiful for everybody else. Oh, I'm this and this and this. But when I die and it's my time to be judged, God is going to put me on the spot, as in boom, 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 and boom.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah, and I would use, and I think we learned this in like, I mean, again, just me and being a new parent and having a son, like positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. Punish your kids for doing something wrong, rewarding them for doing something right. I think now in today's generation, instead of making people stronger in the for the intentions to build strength, we're making excuses that are allowing other people to be weak. You know what I mean? Which isn't making them stronger. It's just now being like, oh, no, we're just being considerate, or we're sensitive. And I've been talking to my team about this a lot, actually. And so I'll use this example. When you're a little kid, you know, there's first place, second place, third place in like a track meet, right? Or and so forth. But kids get participation awards to make them feel good for losing. That doesn't make sense. I know what you mean. You know what I mean? And I read a dad book about it, and it's like, yeah, we're setting our kids up for failure though, because like
expectations.
That is true.
Yeah.
Well, for example, too, when I used to play soccer, we used to have I can't remember the name of the rule, but if we were to score more than 6 goals, it would be like 6-0. We can't score anymore. They would be like, okay, like if we were to score, we'd get penalized because
snowflakes.
I can't remember the exact name of the rule, but I'm like, well, what? Like, if I was the other team, I would want them to like freaking play their hardest,
Yeah.
and we lose 16-0, so I know,
You
okay,
go
this is
home
what we got to
dwelling
work
with that.
on.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
go home dwelling with it with a little bit of
Like,
anger.
okay, I
frustration.
lost 16-0. That's never going to happen again. I'm going to work
Exactly.
hard to get to where I want to be, and we're going to go from there. But yeah, 6-0, and then I
You
can't
can't
remember.
score anymore.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm like,
see, that's
wait,
new to
what?
me, and that frustrates me. Is like, what kind of, and I say men's team because you're a guy, you're a man, and that was the boys team on how you grew up. How are those boys going to grow up on the other team?
Right.
So, it's 0-6. It's cool.
6-0,
We're fine.
well, it's going to stay like that, so we don't have to do anything, right? Because they can't score, so we're not going to really try. It's 6-0 already,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that the reason I say that is because I read a dad book. It was actually specifically for dads, but it's a bunch of famous people who are currently dads in the world, like Kevin Hart, Dr. Dre, all these fathers who give life advice to dads. But one of the things that I read was stating, like, I never want my kid to think that anything but first place is acceptable. And that's not being, I mean, that might come across harsh because we're talking about kids, but in life in general is like the goal, right? Because you just allow your kid to be mediocre and accept failure their entire life, like that becomes normal. And we're not training them to be competitive or to work hard or all the attributes it takes to be a winner. We're just being like, cool, you could be a loser and make it, And I think it's important that we teach them again just to build strengths and know that, like, hey, like in life, when you're going for promotion, they interview 10 people and one walks out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? In one of them used like becoming an actor. One person gets the role of Iron Man, not multiple people.
If you're
You know,
not
I
first,
know.
you're last.
Yeah, if you're
Ricky
not
Bobby.
first, you're last. And second place is first loser. So why would you be okay with second place? Like, do you think Olympians go to the Olympics being like, cool, they're like, I'm going to win silver today and be okay
Yeah,
with
do you
it?
think the Niners are going to be happy when they lose the Super Bowl and the Chiefs
Second
are
best team in the NFL?
I'm not into sports. Don't direct that towards me. I'm not into sports. But I guess something beautiful that, okay. This has to do with the kind of last the last episode that we did. Your goal is what if you enter powerlifting? To get to what place?
first?
Why?
Because I don't want to be last or I don't want to place anything else. I want to go in to win.
Exactly. That mindset you have is beautiful. It could be, I'm not saying idolize, it could be look like, hey, I want that mindset. That's somebody to look up to.
You got that dog. You got that dog.
Like, what if you were on the opposing team that had that score of 0 and the other team had that score of 6, and then as a kid, you're a little kid. Oh, it's okay, it's okay. Or I got my participation points. If you lived in that mentality, being raised as a kid, you would have not had the mindset that you have now to be the man who you are. To I'm going to get first place or
Exactly.
nothing. Like that. That's beautiful. That's what can happen when you're hard on your kids. Even though I don't have kids, it's basic human science of how you're raised is how you're gonna come out. So if you're taught to be first place, be competitive, that's how you're going to be for the rest of your life. And something beautiful could always blossom out of that.
Yeah.
When has hard work ever backfired on somebody?
Right,
You
and
know?
we even see it with us at the gym. He's hitting 315 for 5 on bench. I'm only hitting it for 1. I'm trying to catch him. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
I'm trying to be better than him, but
Which
like,
is okay.
yeah.
It's that friendly thing, and I'm
It's
dropping
like
weight.
it's all
it's
friendly
not malice.
competition.
Yeah,
it is.
And for me to catch up with aesthetics purposes and all that great stuff, I'm dropping weight the fastest I've ever dropped because of you. In that way, and now when I drop that, because of you, and that's something that I hold in my head. It's like, damn, if I look at him, it's like, I want that. Like, that's that friendly competition. As in, like, I always say I look up to you, and I'm not scared to say that because your physique is beautiful. Both of your guys' physique, the strength, everything is there, and I will always say that because it's true. But that fuels me as a man, as a guy, because for a while I plateaued at 220 and I wasn't losing weight. And then just recently, I just dropped, not recently, it's recently. I just dropped 10 pounds. I weighed 210 the other day at bare weight, and I could see my body slowly going back to what it was before I did my dirty bulk. And if I didn't have that friendly competition or that first place mentality or whatever, I would have been, it's okay to plateau at 220. I'll work it out. But in reality, it's that fuel by surrounding yourself with like-minded people. It's going to get me where I want to be.
But yeah, and then so what we were talking about is just, again, making it acceptable to lose. And I think I have a similar story to you. My football coach, which is a game that I always remember, we beat a team 75-13. in high school football. And my coach was always like, no, like I want them to feel what it's like to lose because it's only going to make them better in the future. And if they're okay with losing and walk away from this game feeling sad or don't do anything about him, that's a definition of their character and how bad they want it. And so when I meant like the dog in you, because we hear about that, like having the dog, they got the dog, like it is kind of like one of those things that you either have or you grow into. And I use my backstory as an example too. Like I was very poor. I was not the most athletic, but I hated losing, and I loved the feeling when I won. But when I lost, I was like, I didn't just like buckle down and cry about it. I was like, cool, I want to beat them next time though, because I know we're in the same grade. We're going to play in, more games together. But if I love to win, then I need to step and put my actions where my mouth is and actually do something about it. But all that to say is like the participation award, if you're teaching people that that's okay to receive, then you're only setting people up for failure. Like I'm not saying go out there and be inconsiderate and stomp on the little guy. I'm just saying like, hey, like if you're a winner, win, right? And if there's people that you beat along the way, like teach them how to win, or don't baby them so they think losing's acceptable. Because I hate pity. I just hate pity. When someone just gives you so much pity, I'm like, yeah, that pisses me off because I'm better than that and I know I can do better than this and I'm going to work harder to do it because I love to win. I hate to lose. First place, if you ain't first, you're last. But if you're second, you're a first loser. You know what I mean?
Really quick, like my personal experience, because when I played soccer, my dad was actually my coach and we had a really good team. We had, I think, almost four years undefeated. For the year, would be undefeated champion. The first game that we lost, it was like the whole team was crying. But I like the way that we all responded because we only lost that one game, and we still won the final that year. Mm-hmm. So it was just an off game for everybody. I remember I'm like, what the heck? It's 2-1. We just need to score. At least we'll be tied. We won't be losing. We'll tie the game. And I just remember hearing the final whistle, and it was just a regular season game. I fell to my knees, and I'm like, this is how it feels to lose. Mm-hmm. I don't want to lose again. So, yeah, and then everybody went to training. Everybody was training hard, and, we won out the rest of the season and won the final again. So I'm like, yeah. So and it was crazy because that's when I first got into sports. And when you first get into a sport, you don't really expect to, win like that. Yeah. And I've never really experienced a loss. So, yeah, we're just consistently winning. We were the team to beat. Everyone's like, oh, Charging Knights, you guys are the Charging Knights? Yeah. So,
you had your groupies?
Dude, so I just remember the first loss. And I feel like it's the way how you respond when you lose, because some people will take it like, oh, it's all right.
Brush it off.
Yeah. My whole team responded like, okay, we've been winning for 4 years, and this is our first loss. We're going to soak it in, take it into practice, and train our behinds off. So we're for you guys that don't know, me and Rob are trying not to cuss. Yeah. So
two things. We're not trying to curse on outside the podcast, but we're especially not trying to curse on the pod because editing and all that great stuff too. Exactly. But we're trying to not curse as much. That's the little deal that him and I we shook hands on. So
but where I was going with that.
No, but what I will say, since you guys came from a competitive world of sports, I grew up a nerd, really gamer, really, and has had some gamer competition, like competitiveness. That's games and all, but like what really affected my personal life was when I was at Amazon for like almost 5 years in that way. Who has like the best rates, or even when I became the manager for the last 3 years, it was who has the best shift, who has this, who could always do the best. It was like they enforced that competitive work for like that work environment in a way for challenges and stuff like that. And I think that's what really stuck with me, is because when they would ever look at another shift, oh, that shift's doing good, and like no disrespect or anything, I was like, damn, that person over there is doing better than me. Mm-hmm. That 4 foot whatever.
I know I could be doing better than that person.
Yeah, and I look at myself, it's like, really, Rob? Like, you're really gonna let that person do better than you? And it was never disrespect to the other person at all. It was just mentally like, trying to be a better
I know,
person.
yeah, I know
like
exactly
use it as
what you're
fuel
talking
almost.
about.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the real like thing that struck like, and I wasn't until like 20. And that kind of sucks in as a guy out loud. Just because I was never really around. I don't have any brothers. Sister moved out when she was older. She's moved out like 8 years. When she moved out when she was like 17 or 18, I was like 12. Big age gap. Cousins lived far, so I never had the opportunity to have competition with anybody. I didn't take games serious. Like casual gamer, I was like, oh yeah, let's go. So like, all the competitiveness was open to me when I was 20, when I became into like the manager workforce and all that stuff like that. And that really shifted me on how I approach even clientele in my camera, business and all that stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely like being competitive, being, like how it is to lose and use that field does affect you on a daily basis on on how the rest of your life is going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that because like being realistic, what if we all weren't competitive? Where would we even be right now?
Yeah.
Would we be going to the gym?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, culture, right, plays a big part in that. Because, like, not everyone is in an environment that influences their upbringing, right? Like, some people are born in good homes with, well-off, family makes good money, and that's good for them. But their culture is just, they're not taught what hardship is. But then there are families who are in bad environments with good culture that teach them, the life skills that they need to be competitive. And that's one thing that I appreciate. I didn't have everything growing up. I bottom of the barrel, like literally bottom of the barrel, homeless, drug addict mom, absent dad, poor, government cheese, syrup sandwiches, powdered milk, powdered mashed potatoes. All that to say is like what I learned because of those circumstances, either you make something of yourself or you let life make something of you. And given the circumstances that I had, I felt like life would have buckled me real quick. But, I just, again, like I was so embarrassed. And I think this is where character comes into place. I saw people with things and I saw people born with talent that things came easy. And I was like, I want to be like that, but I know it's going to be hard. And part of the reason why, if you guys haven't noticed or don't know me, I have the tattoo grit on my hand. And if you don't know what grit is, it's a very uncommon word. Great book if you want to find it, Grit and Grace. But the definition of grit is showing your true strength of character through passion and perseverance. Oh my God. Can I say that one time? Showing your true strength of character through passion and perseverance. Like, is your passion strong enough to get you through those hardships? Are you able to persevere? Because just like you guys were saying, we can either react to a situation, right? Which would be like, if I lost, I'm just going to dwell on it and be sad and bummy. Or am I going to be mature enough to respond and be like, no, screw that. I know that we can do better and we are going to be better for it, and then go off and win a championship. You know what I mean? Because we all suffer some sort of L in our life that defines us, right? But either we let that moment define us or we define that moment. You know what I mean? And so that's really huge and something that I offer to anybody who's ever encountered hardship or has like seen someone doing better than them. And like, I think that's kind of like the issue with the generation is like, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Everyone would be in the NFL. Everyone would be the best gamer. Everyone would be famous on Instagram. It's not easy because there are people out there better than you. But if you just accept that like people are always going to be better than you, then you're always going to be a loser.
Yeah.
Right. But if you want to win, then do something about it. Because I hate losing. I hated losing. I hated feeling the embarrassment of people being better than me. And I worked my butt off. Sports, school, everything. Because I never had anything handed to me easily. But I knew that I was capable of getting that. But I saw people who were handed everything who fell below than what they were given. And that sucks for them. I think that's more embarrassing. Is when you have everything set up for you and you fail rather than doing the hard thing and failing. But if you're going to fail, learn from it and move forward fast.
Right. You said it beautiful right there.
Yep.
Really? No, it's exactly what you're saying. It's people who are given everything, they don't know how to take care of it. They don't know how to work for it because they never had to. They were just
value.
Yeah,
There's no value
they just
to it.
here's this and they never learn how to reach for it. It's always been in front of them just to grab it. Versus having to reach really high for it, really, struggle a little bit, try and grab it, and then they know going forward, they always have to reach for it, versus it's like right in front of them, they get it from their dad, from their mom, whatever the case is. And then when it comes time when their parents aren't there, out of the picture, and they're always used to it. Like, hey, it's right here. Oh, it's not there. How do I? What do you mean have to reach? They don't have those skills anymore. Not anymore. They never had
have
them.
it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think that's perfect. I'm going to use this analogy before we segue into whatever the next topic.
question.
Weightlifting, because I know we all started this because we met in the gym, and that's that is a similar hobby that we have. But going for a PR, right? We hate failing that PR, but because we hate that feeling of failing, we love putting in the work so that we can get it next time.
Exactly.
And so I would say that failing is a combination of hatred and a combination of love, right? Which Valentine's Day is coming up, so we'll talk about this a little bit more. But because, again, we hate failing. Like that feeling of like putting in all that hard work and not being able to, PR sucks. But if we just were like, okay, I didn't get it, I'm done, and stop training for it, like that is a testament to who you are. You know what I mean? But there's people who are dedicated and like have that dog in them. You don't just let that failure define the rest of your, routines or the training that you have coming forward. You work your butt off, hands down. And one thing that I've been doing, which I've told you guys, I've been trying to hit 315 for 5 for so long, 405 on squat for 5 for so long, and I hit it yesterday for the first time in a long time.
Dude.
But
There you go.
yeah, it was sick. But like, my advice to anybody too is like, if you fail once, don't quit. Quitting and failing are two different things. Like if you quit because you failed, you're a loser, and I'm gonna just be straight up. But if you fail, don't quit. You learn from it, and then you win, dude. I'll give an F yeah to that any day. You know what I mean? And I really appreciate the people who don't allow failures to turn them into quitters, and they allow failures to turn them into winners. Because every winner will say there is one failure or multiple failures that occurred on their journey that have made them winners. But not every winner will say that they quit.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. That's. You
You get away with your words.
Yeah, that part right there. That part. We could always keep going on and on and on with this, like just never ending. I think that's just what we have in common here. These conversations could keep going, but to kind of bring things to the next portion, did we want to go over the community ones?
Sure. We'll probably go over maybe just one of them today. Let's see. I guess we'll do this one. So somebody asked, and I guess they want kind of advice, why relationships don't last in this generation.
Yeah, and also we're including this portion because we know that Valentine's Day is next week, the holiday of love. But I do love this, and so I'm not going to speak on this first because Chris Bumstead. Yeah, see you bums.
Hey, just speaking positive whenever we have him on the podcast one day.
We're
gonna clip this right here too. You made fun of me, huh? No.
My bad, bro. That was an accident.
Massive.
I know. He's gonna bust through the garage door, just flexing tough. But yeah, we love these questions because Valentine's Day is coming up. So I'm not gonna speak on this first because I'd love to hear from them because I do talk a lot. So,
did you want to? I mean, I'll throw two things out there.
Here, okay, yeah, you go first, and I'll kind of just jump off of what you
Three
said.
things maybe. Lust, pornography, social media. Really solid things. Everybody knows why. Lust. I mean, I'm gonna pick on men because I can only speak for men. I am a man. I identify as a man because I am a man, born a man. No, that's just my humor. Men have, people always say like, oh, it's built into men. It's their nature. It's this and that. But men lust after women, even when they're in a relationship. It's probably because they're not emotionally mature. They're not loyal. They're not this, and all that stems from how they're raised, what they watch, what they consume, who they look up to. It's always like the domino effect. If they're being consumed, if their brain keeps consuming porn and porn and porn, they're gonna pornify their brain. They're gonna look at women differently. They're not gonna know how to handle a relationship. When they don't know how to handle a relationship, that relationship's gonna fall apart. So that's kind of one right there, just right off the whim. Because again, that question could go on for 30 minutes easily. The next part, social media, is comparison. That couple's doing this. That couple's doing that. Oh, this girl liked my photo, or she's a little cuter. Whatever, that's how guys think. I pick it on guys again because I can't speak for women. I don't know how a woman thinks. That's not me,
Yeah.
But that's one thing, is like the social media of.
I guess just jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah, of comparing and seeing what other people are doing,
Yeah.
couple wise, and I guess social media can play a role in like a dating app, almost like a dating app. Instagram is if you really think about it, Instagram is a big dating app. So it's like you're putting yourself out there and you're seeing, oh, this girl's really pretty, I'm gonna like her picture, and you're in a relationship, and then you're scrolling, oh, this girl's really pretty, oh, let me just shoot her a DM, and it's that easy. It's temptation. It's a lot of things that play into factor, but social media, I do agree, can play a major factor onto why this generation is kind of not wanting to, or not having like a solidified relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say also, like, on the other side of that, if you're the one posting pictures and you compare them to the pictures that get a lot of likes, you might look at yourself as like not attractive enough. You know what I mean? Because if I'm posting a picture and I only get like 30 likes, but this dude is getting 100,000 likes,
Right.
and I'm looking at him, I'm gonna, probably compare myself to him. But I would say, yeah, similar to you, and I'll just throw this in there, is I just think that the reason why it's difficult to date nowadays, or why there's issues with dating, is because of a lack of commitment due to a lack of hard work. No one wants to work hard nowadays because making money is so easy. Connecting with people on dating apps is so easy. Posting pictures and receiving attention is so easy. Everybody wants everything so easy nowadays. And when our parents were, obviously younger and got together, like,
They didn't have social media.
Nothing. It was hard work, and their lives were harder, right? Like, manual labor. Like, my dad went like 5 years straight without a day off, and I was like, that's crazy. And to think that, and I'm gonna laugh because I do run a business, but like, that employees have difficulties working a 4-hour to 5-hour shift nowadays. I'm like, bro, what? But to think that, and I'm not calling anybody out because no age discrimination, because I really think it's kind of all over the board. But I do think the biggest issue right now, and why it's so difficult for individuals to have a successful relationship, is due to the fact, like, nobody wants to put in the hard work. Everyone's like, I'll die for you, but dying for someone's easy. Living for someone is really hard. Really hard. Really hard to live for someone and with somebody. It takes a lot of work, and your parents will say that. And anybody who's been in a longevity relationship will say being with them was not always easy. We encountered our bumps in the road, but it was worth it. But nothing that comes easy is worth it, right? And everything that comes hard, might be a little bit more valuable because now you feel those things and work through it together.
Definitely.
So that's my opinion on relationships. If you lack hard work or don't want to do the hard work, just know it's not always going to be easy.
Well, I will say, just to, because again, this could be a whole thing, but just to piggyback it off real quick, there was a stat that was released. I think it's been out there for a while. Like 70% of relationships, somebody in that relationship has a backup or something like that. Like, if that relationship ends, well, it's cool because I have, so and so.
Rebounds.
Like
no rebounds.
Yeah, they have that. So in actuality, they have that because of social media. They have that because of modernization of how, like, going to the gym. At the gym today, there was more girls than guys practically. And that's from a guy's perspective, right? That's a social area where people can socialize. Back then, there wasn't, again, like back in the older days or whatever the case. I'm not sure how far we want to go. If we want to go to like 1800s or whatever the case is.
We could even go back to our parents.
Yeah.
There wasn't. They had to go through. We have it so easy to where.
Yeah.
Oh, I think this girl's pretty.
Yeah.
You go on to Valley Fitness. She posted a picture on Valley Fitness.
Yep.
Oh, this is her. Oh, follow. DM.
Yep.
Like that. They
Exactly.
weren't able to do that back then.
Connection.
Back then they
would
were
have to go-
stuck basically.
Yeah.
Almost not stuck, but I know what you're saying. I think you're going a different path than I am. But if you want to finish yours,
No, go ahead.
no. But my ideology is how John's saying how being in a relationship is hard work. Back then when they didn't mentally have these mental rebounds or whatever, then it was like, damn, if I'm gonna be with this woman, if I'm gonna be with this guy, I'm gonna get put in my work so I could be happy. And that way, nowadays it's just mentally like, if it ends, I always got that girl at the gym or whatever the case is.
And I think the biggest saying, just to simplify what you're saying, that I've always heard is like, don't just be with anyone, be with someone. And I think we just, because of the access that we have nowadays, we have more options. And included in those options is the options to compare people to people.
Yeah.
You know, when our parents met, there's no internet, no Google, no Instagram, none of these apps that we have that are easily used to find people, which again is great, but also can be a disadvantage for a lot of individuals looking to be in a successful relationship. But I would say I'm totally on board with you, like the rebound, because I'm going to be honest, I've rebounded, and it was probably, and I think everyone who's rebound probably regrets it. And I'm speaking on my own terms of people that I've talked to and like watching podcasts on rebounds. They're like, no, I never ever intended to date them or like see a future with them. They were just made me feel good in the moment. And I've always told people, don't choose a good time over a good thing. You know what I mean? But I do think this is a heavy topic, maybe something we could discuss further in our podcast, on another podcast, but divorce rates. Successful marriages, like what? You know what I mean? The stats on those. So we'll
That's all. That's
to
another
be continued.
Especially somebody who has divorced parents and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
that's something I can definitely have like a lot of input. Not being divorced, but being in a divorced family.
Yeah,
It's a big difference.
and I love that this individual reached out about this because again, Valentine's Day is around the corner. But I think this is a topic, and some of the other suggestions that we received from our audience are topics that we can spend some time on and be a little bit more thorough. So,
is it cool if we just name them out loud, just to make sure that we just name them out loud, the topics, just for future things? If you guys definitely want it, like let us know. If you guys are actually reading the full YouTube thing, like watching the full YouTube thing, but we'll probably clip it. But if these are the possible topics for the next ones, because again, they're really great questions. Did you want to?
Yeah, so we have how social media affects reality. We have a conversation on PEDs. Ooh, and I think Mr. Joel would be a good person to
Special
speak on
guest,
that.
maybe? No.
We have another topic on travel. And then another one on how to not be scared when pursuing your dreams.
Just freaking do it.
No, sorry.
passion.
Yeah.
I think those are great topics to obviously just table this conversation and proceed, since we've been babbling a lot.
This was a lot longer than what we expected, but that's what the beautiful thing about podcasts are. We just kind of go in here with maybe like one or two topics in mind, and we just let everything else just be organic. Again, we don't script anything. We just go off a whim. That's why John gave a great disclaimer about our knowledge and everything like that. Like, we may say some stuff, but they may not be true, but we won't ever purposely try to give false information.
Yeah, absolutely. And also one ask is like, we're kind of running into some drip issues. What do we wear to these podcasts? I know Javi has some fire outfits the last couple outfits.
Yeah, my house. It's literally my house.
You guys are always wearing hats.
I'm like, we're always wearing hats too. So to fit the aesthetic, I would love to hear from our audience, like, what should we wear? But Rob,
I actually had a question, a plug-in.
Yep.
To shout out
Your guy.
You want to read the back for me real quick?
Become the hero. Set goals. Take action of your own. Sorry. Become the hero. Set goals. Take action of your own story. Become the hero. Oh, okay. So that's where. Become the hero of your own story. Set goals. Take action. It's because he has it written up here, and then it goes down here, and then in red it's this. Yeah, that's pretty cool
Fitness.
though. Action Fitness, Riverbank, California.
So Action Fitness is one of my clients that I'm working with. Great community, beautiful thing they got going on. But I have an idea, and I wanted the community feedback on this one. With Action Fitness giving me this beautiful shirt, the quality is freaking amazing. This is not sponsored. This is just as a person who buys shirts online, and when you get that shirt and you feel the material and you can really just tell a difference, like, wow, this is a really good shirt, you could tell a difference. I'm assuming from your guys' experience, you could tell when it's a really cheap shirt in a way. What would you guys be interested if we had that logo slapped on our shirt? Really high quality shirt. Grant, I speak because this shirt's really premium. It feels really great. I don't really wear shirts like this that are like from a gym, but just because the quality is there, it definitely helps. Shout out to Action Fitness for this shirt. Not sponsored once again, but it's just, again, as a person who likes shirts, quality makes a huge difference if I'm going to wear it or not. But what would you guys feel about having our brand on a high quality shirt like that? If you guys would be interested in it, if you guys wouldn't be interested in, just opinions out there, anything like that.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, because we've been talking about dropping some merch because merch is awesome, and we'd love to see some of our supporters just wear them. Again, we're still growing our following, and again, supporters, our community. But I think it would be awesome to give away some of our merch once we have a design and that design and shirts made. Again, this wasn't a sponsored commercial or anything because, as you can see, me and Javi aren't wearing a shirt. So Action Fitness calling you out a little bit because I wear a 2X and I would love a T-shirt. But also, this is kind of the point. Like, we want to support the locals, especially like being able to wear some of their merch. And I shouted out Port City Strength on the previous podcast, and I still have my sweater ordered. I'm waiting for it, but Joel gave me one because I called him out. So shout out to them. But again, our whole objective too is just to gather remarkable people. You know what I mean? And so if you haven't looked in our bios, or if you haven't looked at our posts or read the captions yet, like, I would pay attention to those too, because we're trying just to, again, be supportive, get more people in our community that are like-minded and have ambition, and we just want to fuel each other's vision as well. So kudos.
Yeah.
Any other announcements?
Nah, just, again, it's really premium shirt. I don't know, the quality's there. That's all I can say.
Go Brock Purdy. Happy Valentine's Day.
Bye, guys.
Thank you guys for watching. Go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Yes, sir.
The teleprompter's still going, by the way.